And so tonight, as we get ready to dive into this message that I have for you guys tonight, we're talking about an idea of love. Love is in the center of what we're talking about. We're talking about a better life and what that looks like to choose God and why choosing God is a better life for us. But before we get there tonight, I just want to take a couple minutes to say, to let you guys know, and over the last few weeks we've been talking to you about this move that we're going to be making from Trinity here at Trinity meeting on Sunday nights to a move that we're going to be able to make to North Lakeland Elementary School, which is about 3 miles north of here. North Lakeland Elementary School has opened their doors to us and has said, hey, come on in and you can use our school on Sunday mornings. You can use it on Wednesday nights for your youth group. You can use our school. And so we've been working without a deal with them, working through the idea of working or getting everything worked out with the school board. And so we are on the hills, like we are right there at the finishing line trying to get things wrapped up and get things done. And so our hope is within the next 3 weeks or so that we're going to be able to make a move from Sunday nights to Sunday mornings. We're going to do service at 10:30. So we're just waiting to get the okay from the school board. So stay alert, stay on our Facebook page, stay on our website. Make sure that you guys are up to speed on stuff. I'll be putting some things in my weekly email, which is one of the things where Josiah talked about filling out a connection card at the beginning of the service. If you fill one of those out and drop it in the box, then it gives us an opportunity for you to be in our email list so that you know what's happening here at the church. And so we'll be letting you guys know in the next few weeks exactly when the first day will be and when we'll be making that move officially to North Lakeland. And so we're really excited about that. One of the things that we have to each month, we are going to do the third Sunday of every month. We want to do baptism as a church. And so last month we had someone to baptize, and this month we don't have anybody tonight, but we've got a few people that are close and are almost ready. And so it's just one of the things that we want to make sure that you guys understand what the step of baptism is for us and what we believe in it as a church, and the idea that Jesus was fully immersed when he was baptized. And so we believe in baptism by full immersion. And it's that first step of obedience. When you give your life to Christ, then the next step in obedience for you is to be baptized. And there's some people that have given their life to Christ but never been baptized, or may have been baptized as a small child, whatever that looks like. But if that's ever you, or you feel like, hey, in my step or in my faith, I've never been baptized, or you just recently gave your life to Christ and you want to be baptized, then come talk to me or Jordan or Josiah, one of the other staff, about what that looks like, what that could be like, and for you, so that we can get you signed up so that we can do that. It's going to be a huge part of who we are. We want to do it each month. We're going to throw it out there each month that we can do it, and so that it's out there. And we just got this big inflatable pool that we just blew up, and last month Bobby just sat down in it and we just dunked him in this big inflatable pool, and it works, right? And so it's just this sign of obedience of what we have and our step and our walk with Christ. And so here's what I want tonight. I want to share with you this idea of a better life and what that looks like. And so if you had asked me 13 years ago, or if you had told me 13 years ago that, hey, listen, if you give your life to God, if you will follow God with everything that you have, if you will follow Him with all that you are, if you will do that, then I promise you the life with God is going to be a better life. If you had told me that 13 years ago, I would have laughed in your face and I would have told you that you were crazy. That I had a pretty good life. I was married, I had a couple kids, I had a high-paying job, we had just bought a house. So for a while we lived in apartments, and that was cool for us. And so I felt like I had a good life. We had a couple decent cars, and so my life for me was pretty good. The last thing that I felt like I needed in my life was God. I would have told you that you were crazy. I would have told you that I'm good. I don't need that in my life. And I think that sometimes we walk through life sometimes thinking about the idea that that life without God may be better. Because we have all these things on the outside that are pulling us in different directions. We have all these things sometimes that are distracting us and pulling us away from God. Whatever that may be for you, that we have distractions, or maybe it was for you at some point in your life. But we have all these things in our life that pull us in different directions and tell us that, hey, this is better over here, or this is better. Like if you choose this option, or if you choose this option, it's like you're almost buying a car with all these different options. The more options you buy, the better your car is going to be. And we think that with life, the more options I have, the better things are, the better my life will be. And that's not the case, and that's not true at all. But the world will tell us that, hey, if you do this and if you do that, and hey, here's this temptation and here's this distraction, and hey, here's some more money over here. And there's all these things that the world will tell us will make your life better and will give you a better life. If you just choose this and just move in that direction, then everything in your life is going to be much better. And that's going to be, and you don't really need God in your life. Or if you do have God in your life, He's just a part of your life instead of being your life. That I think that that's some of the mistake in the church that we have, and even for people who come to church on every once in a while. They come once a month. They come every 4 or 5 months. That in their mind, it's okay in their relationship with God that they're just here for a time. They're just here as long as I come to church and I show up once every 4 months, I'm good. And God is just part of their life instead of being their life. And I think it's a mistake that we make quite a bit in that when we think through those things. And so my life and your life, it plays out in a way that we think that for some reason that God has something great for us. Or maybe we don't think that God has something great for us. And that we are like, to me, God has this great story for us that He is writing page by page by page. And God has this great thing for us and has great things in store for us, but we are like a little kid in a candy store sometimes. If you take a small child or any child into a candy store and they are just going to go crazy, they're going to want a little bit of everything. They're going to run all over the store and take a little bit of this and take a little bit of that, and I want this and I want that, and they're just like, candy! Right? They're just excited. They're whatever they need. They're just going to go get whatever they want. In the meantime, like God's like, hey, I've got this over here for you. And like, no, I want this and this and this, and I want to take some of this, and I'm going to do that. And we're all distracted. And we've got all these temptations and all these things that are happening in our lives. And so I feel like sometimes we're just like a little kid in a candy store where we're missing what God has for us because we're so distracted by all the things that the world tells us would make us and give us a better life. But that if we're not really careful, the world is going to lead us astray, and the world is going to lead us in a direction that's going to lead us away from God. And in the midst of it leading us away from God, it's going to cheapen the version of life that God has in store for us. That for so long in my life, I felt like that all the things that I had in my life were giving me a good life, when really all it was giving me was a cheap version of what God had in store for me. And I think sometimes we do that. I think sometimes we are distracted by the things that are going on around us, and it leads us in a direction that leads us away from the greatness of what God has for us. And so there was this week, many of you guys know, whatever, my youngest daughter, Michaela, who's 7 years old. Michaela is a water bottle, trying to think, junkie. That's a good word. She's a water bottle junkie. The kid wants a new water bottle every week so she can take something new in her book bag. She wants the latest and greatest and the coolest water bottle in class. And so we are constantly trying to find her some stuff every once in a while, or just tell her she's got to deal with what she has. But Kim found these really cool water bottles the other day, and it almost looks like a small little soda bottle with this cap on it. And she found them at Walmart, and they're on the clearance rack, and they're like $1.50, and Michaela probably thinks it costs $20, right? And so it's like $1.50 the clearance rack at Walmart, and she was so excited. It was cute. It had like these little owls on it with sunglasses, and it's like this really super cute thing, and she was just loving her water bottle. Like she was the coolest kid in class because of this amazing water bottle that she had. And so she is drinking a lot more water out of it, which is good too, right? And so she takes it the other day as she runs outside after school to go play, and she runs across the street to go play with her friend Hannah, and as she's running across the street, it hits her side, I think, and she drops it, and it lands on the road, and it shatters, right? Because it's just this plastic water bottle, and it just breaks. And the kid comes walking in, and if you've ever been around her, she is the most dramatic kid you've ever been around, right? She's the funniest kid, but she is the most dramatic kid, and her world is shattered just like the water bottle. She's crying. She's sitting in the middle of the kitchen floor, like holding the water bottle, like crying over it, right? My heart as a dad's like, I'm going to Walmart right now and buying her a new one, right now. And she's just broken by the fact that her water bottle is just shattered. And I'm thinking, well, maybe we can do something with it. And then she like shows me the pieces, and I'm like, no, kid, that's trashed, right? There's not much we can do with that. And so she's like, Daddy, you got to go to the store right now. Like, you got to get me your water bottle right now. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to go right now. We're about to eat dinner and all these things. And she's got this look that she gives me that usually melts me like butter, right? And so she's pounding her lip and making her lip quiver and all these things. And I'm like, I'm not going to go to the store right now. But I'll tell you what I'll do. right? Because I take Michaela to school every morning, and Kim takes Katie to school. And so I'm like, if you can get up extra early in the morning, I'll take you by Walmart. We'll have to leave 15 minutes early. I'll take you by Walmart, and you can pick out the water bottle. We'll probably find the exact same one. We'll take you to Walmart. You can pick out a water bottle. We'll leave at 6:45 instead of 7 if you can get up early. And if you can get up early, I'll even take you by Dunkin' Donuts, right? So I'm like, how early am I going to leave in the morning? And so we get to Walmart, and as we walk back, and all of you have been there, I'm sure, and as you walk back to the houseware section where all the water bottles, there is like the mecca of water bottles on one shelf, right? It's about this wide, and it's from top to bottom. It is full of every water bottle from every price, from $30 to like $5, right? But the clearance rack is like 4 or 5 over there, right? So as we're walking, I'm trying to get her to go past the water bottle heaven and try to get her to go over to the clearance rack so we can go look at that. And all she sees out of the corner of her eye is all these water bottles. And it's boom, she's just there, and she's just like this. Big smile on her face. She's like, well, I like this one and I like this one. I'm like, no, Boo, because we call her Boo. I'm like, Boo, no, we got to go over here. Like, let's go over here. Like $1.50 water bottles over here. I'm not paying $12 for a water bottle for a 7-year-old kid. I'm not. And she's like, no, we got right here, Daddy, like water bottle heaven. Like, look at this. She didn't even know what to do. She was overwhelmed. And I'm like, so I walk like 4 aisles away, like a couple feet away from her. She's like from me to the window. And I'm like, look, here's the same one you have over here, right? And she's like, and I was trying to distract her, and I was trying to tempt her with what I felt was better for her, but she was locked into what she wanted in that moment. And by the time we get done, now I'm looking at my phone. I'm like, dude, we got to go. We're going to be late for school. So she picks out this water bottle, and I look at the price, and it's like $9.96. And I'm like, Kim's going to kill me, but it's all good. We got to go. All right, fine. You win. Let's roll. And so we run out of the store, and we are able to get to Dunkin' Donuts, and I get her to school. And she's like, Daddy, but you got to wash the water bottle first before I can drink out of it. So she's in Dunkin' Donuts, and we're washing the water bottle out in Dunkin' Donuts and the hot water they got there, and we fill it up, and she goes off to school. And it just made me think as we were driving to her school, and that our lives are very similar to that. And that God has something special for us. He knows exactly what we want, but the world is like me, trying to get us to take a cheaper version of what God really has in store for us. God's like, hey, here's the life I have for you. Here's the life I've chosen for you. Look at all this. I've given you a lot of choices. I've given you a lot of things to look at, but yet we're over here playing with the $1.50 water bottle like, no, this is good. And God's like, no. You've got a cheap version of the life that I have for you. Like, here's what I want for you. And it just made me take a step back and think about that. Like, how often do we feel like that? How often are we distracted by the things that are going on in our life? How often are we distracted by all these other things that the world is telling us will lead us to a better life? But yet we are choosing a lot of times the cheaper version, but the cheaper version of the life that sometimes we choose in that moment, it feels better for us. In that moment, we're like, okay, hey, this is good. This is what I want. In the meantime, God's like, no, I have something so much better for you. And today, in the story that we're going to look at, we're going to see this idea of God laying out this story for us. And what I love so much about it is that I feel like so much that God is like, hey, like, don't make that choice over there. Don't choose that path. Don't choose that cheap water bottle over there. Look at this life that I have for you. And yet, even though most of the time we choose this, God is still pursuing us. God still loves us. God still has a plan for us. God wants something great for our lives, and He's patient with us as we walk through time after time after time again. And so today, if you guys have your Bibles, I want you to turn to Deuteronomy chapter 30. We're going to look at a story here in Deuteronomy chapter 30. And the idea is that made me take a step back and think, so why is it so hard for us to follow God's plan? Why is it so hard for us to follow His plan? And what if we realized that His plan wasn't as hard to follow as we thought that it was? And what if His plan was within our reach? Because I think so often we are confused and lost and messed up by the idea that God's plan we're not capable of reaching that plan, that it's so far away from us, and that just this idea of choosing the path and choosing what God has for us. And so look with me in Deuteronomy chapter 30. And as we get there and as you turn there, if you look at the preceding chapter in Deuteronomy chapter 29, this is kind of the last charge. If you're not familiar with Moses and you're not familiar with the story and you don't understand what's happening here, Moses has been leading the Israelites for 40 years through all kinds of stuff and all kinds of ups and downs, and they've been wandering around in the wilderness for 40 years trying to get to the promised land, and they've had their ups and they've had their downs, and there are all these things. And as we get towards the end of the book of Deuteronomy, Moses is here and God is saying, hey, I want you to give them this charge. I want you to give them this talk. I want you to tell them about the covenant that I have with them and remind them of how great things are and how things have done and how I've been with them and how I've walked with them. And so if you look in the preceding chapter in Deuteronomy 29, which I encourage you to go read this week, read it this week and then reread all of chapter 30. But Moses just kind of stands there before them and says, hey, listen, I've called all you guys here. I want you to understand and I want you to see. And he kind of runs through some things that have happened in their life. But in chapter 29, verse 9, he says this, therefore keep the words of this covenant and do them that you may prosper in all that you do. And then we get to Deuteronomy chapter 30. And I love this idea. And we're going to look in Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 10. And here's what it says. It says, when you obey the voice of the Lord your God, to keep His commandments and His statutes that are written in the book of the law, when you turn to the Lord your God with all of your heart and with all of your soul. For this commandment that I command you today is not too hard for you, neither is it far off. It is not in heaven that you should say, who will ascend to heaven for us and bring it to us that we may hear it and do it. Neither is it beyond the sea that you should say, who will go over to the sea for us and bring it to us that we may hear and do it. But the word is very near you. It is in your mouth and in your heart so that you can do it. See, I have set before you today life and good and death and evil. And if you obey the commandments of the Lord your God that I command you today by loving the Lord your God and by walking in His ways and by keeping His commandments and His statutes and His rules, then you shall live and multiply, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land that you are entering to take possession of it. But if your heart turns away and you will not hear but are drawn away to worship other gods and serve them, I declare to you today that you shall surely perish, that you shall not live long in the land that you are going over the Jordan to enter and possess. I call heaven and earth to witness against you today, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore choose life, that you and your offspring may live, loving the Lord your God, obeying His voice and holding fast to Him. For He is your life and length of days, that you may dwell in the land that the Lord swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, to give them. This week, as I was putting the message together and was thinking through it, every once in a while, and I think it could be this way with all the Scripture, because the Scripture stands alone on its own. It doesn't need me to explain it to you each week, right? But there's some weeks that you just read the Scripture and you just want to say, okay, hey, we're done. Like, I want to read this over you. I want you to listen to what it's saying. There's not much more that I need to say to you to really think about what Moses or what God is speaking through Moses to the people. But he begins to. And so what I want to do today for just a few minutes is just look at this verse by verse and think about how it applies to our life and break it down in that way that as they're talking through the covenant and as they're talking through the things that God has done for them, and God is trying to remind the Israelites that these are the things that I've promised to you. These are the things that I've laid before you. That He says, hey, when you obey the voice of the Lord your God to keep His commandments and His statutes that are written in this book of law, when you turn to the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. And then He says in verse 11, for this commandment that I command you today is not too hard for you, neither is it too far off. We're talking about the idea of God having a better life for us, a better life than we can choose for ourselves, a better life than we can plan for ourselves. And I love this idea that Moses just says, hey, listen, if you can love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, it's not as hard as you think. It's not as difficult as you think that it may be. And it's not that far off, which means, hey, it's within your reach. Like, you can do this. Like, let me give you some words of encouragement that it's not as difficult to love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul as you think it is, because I don't know about you guys, but there's been times in my faith, and there's been times in my faith walk where it would be much easier just to give up. There's times when you just feel beat up and you just feel defeated, and there's times that you're just like, you know what, I just don't know sometimes if it's worth it. Do I feel that way now? Not as much as I used to, but early in my faith there was times that I just don't know if it's worth it. And I love this word because Moses is saying to the people, hey, listen, it's not as hard as you think. It's not as far off as you think that it is. It is literally within your reach. Like, you can reach out and grab a hold of what God has for you. You can reach out and grab a hold of what God has in store for you. That if you can love the Lord with all your heart and with all your soul, it's within your reach. It's not that difficult. Yet I think sometimes we make it so difficult. We make excuses for our faith. We make excuses of why we can't follow. We make excuses of why we can't be obedient. We make excuses of why we can't do what God has in store for us. But right here, Moses says, hey, listen, it's not that hard. And it's not that far off. It's right here. It's within your reach. But then he goes on to say, is it not in heaven that you should say, who will ascend to heaven for us and bring it to us, that we may hear it and do it? Or neither is it beyond the sea that you should say, who will go over the sea for us and bring it to us, that we may hear and do it? The people, how many times do we do that? Like, well, if God would just answer this, or if God would just do this for me, or if this person would show up and do this for me, or if this person would do that, then my faith would be stronger and I would be able to believe. And it's if somebody would just go there and come here, then it would be easier for me. And Moses is saying, hey, listen. Nobody needs to go to heaven and bring it back. The word that God's given you, the love that God's given you, the fact that He's going to send His Son some 2,000 years later to love on you, He already came from heaven. What we're reading, what we're studying, what we're looking at is heavenly. Nobody needs to go to heaven and bring this back to you. It's here. Nobody needs to go across the sea and go get it. It's not way over there. Like, it's right here in your midst. It's within your reach. It's within your grasp. The life that I have for you is right here, but yet we seem like it's so far off. We feel like, well, the plan that God has for me must be way over there on the other side of the sea. And so eventually, hopefully, I'll get there. Like, it's going to take me some time. It's a process for me to get in the boat and go to the other side of the ocean. And once I get there, then maybe I'll discover what God's plan is for me. And I'll discover what His love looks like for me. And I'll feel that. And Moses is saying, hey, no. It's within your reach. It's not as hard as you think it is. It's not as difficult as you think it is. No one needs to go get it for you. It's there. Because then he follows up by this and he says, but the word is very near you. Isn't it interesting when you think about the opening of the book of John? And it reads like this. Maybe. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. Right? In John chapter 1:1, he's talking about Jesus, and he's talking about the Word, and he's talking about how the Word is with us, and He's always there. And then Moses says here, but the Word is very near you. It is in your mouth, and it is in your heart, so that you can do it. The thing and the plan and the life that God has in store for you is within your reach. The things that God is stirring in your heart, the thing that God is doing in your heart, it is there within your reach. But then he goes on to say in verse 15 that, hey, listen, see, I've set before you today life and good, and death and evil. I've given you a choice, is basically what he's saying. I've given you a choice. I've given you a choice, and I'm glad that God didn't create us to be robots, that if He just created us to be robots, that we just followed Him everywhere that we went, right? That would be easier for us, but God has given us a choice. God has said, hey, I've set down good and life for you over here, and I've given you bad and evil and these things here. So I've given you your choices, and you've got to choose. Where do you want to go? What choices do you want to make? And so often, unfortunately, we choose this over here. We choose the bad and the evil and the things that aren't good. And it doesn't mean that we're doing something horrible, but if it's not what God has for us, then it's not good. God has something that is good for us, that is better for us. And so often we choose the other path. We choose the other side of what God has for us. But He gives us a choice. And many times I've made the wrong choice. Many times you've made the wrong choice. over and over again. It's part of who we are. It's part of our flesh. It's part of us being sinful people because it's just who we are, that we have chosen the wrong path often. But yet God is still loving. He is still patient. He is still caring. He's still there for us. That's why I love the fact that we just sang tonight about I can't believe. And then to go into how He loves, just because I'm just overwhelmed right now over the last 2 months, just about the fact that God loves me that much that He's chosen me. That He had a plan for me. When I didn't, He did. And so He says, see, I've set before you life and good and death and evil, so it's your choice. You choose which path you want to go on. You choose which path you want to take. Because here is what I'll tell you is that if you obey the commandments of the Lord your God that I command you today by loving the Lord your God and by walking in His ways and by keeping the commandments and His statutes and His rules, then you shall live and multiply, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land that you are entering to take possession of it. If you choose the better life, if you choose the life that God has for you, if you choose the plan that God has for you, then He tells us and He promises you right here in His Word that He's going to bless you and that He's going to multiply you and He's going to do all these things in your life. And it doesn't mean that He's going to give you everything that you want. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that choosing God and making that be the better life means that you're going to have everything you want and that it's going to be easy. It's not necessarily easier to follow God. It's just the right choice. It's just the right decision. Right? I thought I had the better life because I had a really nice job that paid me a whole lot of money. I make less money in my life right now than I've ever made in my entire life, and I'm happier than I've ever been because I'm trying to choose the better life. It's not about all of the other things that the world tells us is going to give us the better life. It's what Moses is saying. Hey, I've given you good and life, and I've given you evil. You choose. But He says, if you will walk in my ways, if you obey my commandments, if you'll love me with all of your heart and with all of your soul, then I'm going to bless you that you are entering in the land that you're about to take possession of. It makes me think about the school that we're about to step into. From a church standpoint, right? We're talking about us personally and where we are, and are we choosing the better life that we want for ourselves? But it makes me think about our church, and I can't help, as I was putting my message together this week, to think about us about to take possession of the land that God's calling us to at North Lakeland Elementary. When we went to the school, it wasn't like, hey, can we rent your cafeteria and some classroom space so we can have a place to meet on Sunday mornings? It was, hey, can we form a partnership with you so that we can come in and help transform your school and bring the love of Jesus and bring the gospel and bring the goodness that we want to bring and try to be just a part of a plan to help transform the school? Because if you don't know anything about North Lakeland, it's a tough school. It's a Title I school with a lot of kids, with a lot of problems and a lot of issues. And so it's not like we're walking into the school that's got it all together. We're walking into a land where God is like, here, the harvest is ripe. Like, here you go. I just need some workers, right? And God's calling us to it. The community around North Lakeland Elementary desperately needs Jesus. Desperately. Just drive through the neighborhood like I have over the last couple weeks. And just look at the condition of the houses. Look at the condition of the people that are around the place and know that we're going to have the opportunity to do something great. And so my hope as pastor is that we're praying and that we're leading in a direction and that we're following God's ways and we're following His will and we're following all the things that He has, so that as we step into this land that God's calling us to, that we too can reap the benefits of that. Not for us, but so that we can transform this school and transform this community. When we first started to plant the church and we started thinking through things, and I was like, God, I just want it to grow and I just want it to be big and I want to reach all these people. And it's not because I just want to be the pastor of a big church. I just want to reach as many people as we possibly can. And just as clearly as if I was talking to one of you guys, I felt like God saying, if you just love on the city, the people are going to come. You guys ever seen like Fields of Dream, like you build it and they'll come, right? I just felt like God saying, hey, if you love on the city, the people are going to come. And that's what we're trying to do through Serve the City. That's what we're going to do at the school. We just want to love on the city. I don't care whether we're 50 people or 5,000 people. It doesn't matter to me. I just want to love on the city and let that lay out where it lays out. And that's what we're going to do. And so God is saying, hey, listen. whether it's corporately as a body or whether it's you as an individual, if you will just follow my statutes and you will walk in my ways and you will keep my commandments and you will do all the things that I'm calling you to do, if you will just choose the better life, then I've got plans for you. But then he goes on to say, but if your heart turns away and you will not hear, but you are drawn away to worship other gods and serve them. For them, in this context, in this story, in their time, they had all these other gods that they had built, all these other altars that they were worshiping. For us, it may be something else. It may be money. It may be social media. It may be your telephone. It may be whatever it is that's distracting you from God, whatever it is that's keeping you from following His commandments and following His ways and doing all those things. If you're going to choose in that moment to serve another God and be distracted from what the life that God has for you, then He says, listen, I declare to you today that you shall surely perish. You shall not live long in the land that you are going over the Jordan to enter and possess. But I'll call heaven and earth to witness against you today, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. There's the choice again. And then he tells us, therefore choose life, that you and your offspring may live, loving the Lord your God and obeying His voice and holding fast to Him, for He is your life and length of days. Think about that. For He is your life and your length of days. And some of you are like, what does that even mean? What does it mean, the length of days? I think it goes back to us talking about the idea that God not being just a portion of our life. That our relationship with God isn't just a part of our life, but our relationship with God is our life. That God is everything for us. He's getting you through the day. He's there for you. You're worshiping, you're praying, you're reading, you're studying. Even if you're working, you're still thinking about God, and you're in that context as much as you can, that you're just trying to be in His presence as much as you possibly can. Because if your day is around Him, I promise you your day is going to be better, and it's going to be much easier to choose a better life. For He is your life and length of days, that you may dwell in the land that the Lord swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, to give them. And so here's what I want you guys to know, and here's what I want you guys to walk away with, is that choosing God is choosing a better life. And for many of you, you sit here tonight, especially in a room this small, and most of you guys I know, and most of you guys are sold out in your faith walk, and it's like, dude, I chose God a long time ago. I may not always do the right thing. I may not always make the right decision, but I chose God a long time ago. So this doesn't even resonate with me. It doesn't even make sense to me because I chose God. I'm trying to do the better life. Like I've never done some of the things that you're talking about. I don't have your testimony or Jordan's testimony from last week. Like I chose God a long time ago. If that's you, then that's great. But my question is, if you've chosen God a long time ago, are you choosing the path that He has for you? Are you walking in His ways? Are you doing all the things that you need to do? Is He your life? Or is He just a part of your life? Or maybe you sit here today and He's not part of your life and He's not part of who you are. And then I promise you that if God isn't part of your life and you haven't made that decision to follow Him and you haven't got that decision in your life where He is, you have that relationship with Him, then I promise you that you haven't chosen the better life. And it was so encouraging to me this week. So encouraging to me this week to read the scripture, which I know I've read before. But if I'll be honest with you, it's been a while since I've been in the book of Deuteronomy, right? And to read this at the end, I mean, think about the context of what's happening here. Moses is about to pass off this tribe of people that he's been with for 40 years. He's been pastoring this church for 40 years. And he's about to pass this thing off to Joshua. About to pass this thing off that God has said, hey, you've taken them as far as you can take them. Now it's time for you to hand this thing over to Joshua, and he's going to lead them into the promised land. And this last charge that Moses gives is this covenant from God saying, hey, listen, if you will just follow me, if you'll just choose the better life, then I have something great in store for you. I've given you choices. I'm giving you life. I'm giving you death. I'm giving you blessings. I'm giving you curses. It's up to you to choose which life you want to follow. And I don't know about you guys, but I think it's encouraging to think about it from this standpoint that no matter where you are in your relationship with God, and I always say this, no matter where you are, you can always be closer. You can always be closer. You can always choose the better life. Because there's a moment that's going to happen tomorrow when you're in the midst of your studies, or you're in the midst of homework, or you're in the midst of work, or you're in the midst of a conversation with your husband or wife or kid or whatever. There's a midst that you're going to choose a different option. You're going to think a different way. You're going to go a different path. And if we can just choose the better life and try to be in His presence as much as we can, then that life is the better life. Because choosing God is choosing a better life. And so tonight, I just want to ask you guys to close your eyes for me for just a moment. Here's what I want to do for tonight.